It's Talk Funny, a podcast by Mark Bailey and other comics from all over. We came to Japan to see old men arguing with female doctors, saying I saw a real doctor last year and he told me something different. Well, maybe you old guys need to travel back in time there then. The Talk Funny podcast from Nagoyaradio.com and Nagoyacomedy. Here's Mark Bailey.
So it's Talk Funny, and I'm Mark Bailey. Welcome back to Mike Miller.
It's great to be back.
Mike, we need to do a public service announcement. I have to read this first. I have a lot of people that listen to my show, and they may misunderstand when I talk about what I call my bar hostess friends. So we live near a certain park with a bad repute, and every person in my building, except for me, is a bar hostess. So I just know all these bar hostess girls. But just for the record, I want to state, and my lawyer's listening on Zoom, let me read this. At no time or at any time would I ever or even consider going to a hostess bar. And the fact that I know a lot of the bar hostesses in Nagoya means absolutely nothing. I live with them. I mean, I live in a building with them. You know what I'm trying to say? I think I made it worse. Yes.
So they're treating me well? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Am I blinking enough? I think Mike agrees with me, but I have a fundamental disagreement with just the whole idea. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yes.
If you're a foreigner in Japan, you can meet girls.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay anything. You might buy them coffee or a drink or something, but you can meet girls. You don't have to go in to a bar where you're not allowed to touch the girls, and then you pay a table charge. You're paying 30,000, 40,000 yen just to talk to a girl, and she's not even that interesting.
I feel exactly the same way. So sometimes when you go out in Japan, you go out with a friend who really wants to go to one of these places, and I had the fortune or misfortune of going to one of these places a short time ago with some people who had some acquaintances who had a fair amount of money, so they didn't mind, they didn't care, because these places are very expensive. And so we went to this place and sat down, and you're chatting with these hostesses, and they basically they talk you up like you're the greatest guy, you're the most handsome guy, you're amazing, you're wonderful, and it's just so, I guess if I were 20, if I were 26, when I came to Japan, I would be like over the moon. I'm like, oh my God, this girl is telling me how wonderful I am. She doesn't even know me, and she knows how great I am. You know, this is awesome.
If you hadn't met, a girl on a train and found out how easy it is to just ask her on a date.
Right, exactly. And so, but now that I'm 46, I'm kind of listening to this, and I'm like, yeah, look, could you just stop gaslighting me? I didn't enjoy it at all. And that's why I never go. And also, these places are incredibly expensive. I don't see the point. I
looked on a website. There's even a guide for new bar hostesses and things they can say to not just foreigners, but to things they say to guys to boost their ego so that they will buy more drinks. And you buy more drinks for the girl, you have to buy drinks for the owner.
That's when it gets expensive, when you buy drinks for the girls, because you're paid like twice the price or something.
Oh, it's nuts.
And they're drinking juice.
Yeah.
It looks like beer or just champagne, but
you're paying
juice.
700 yen for juice.
Yeah.
So some of the comments, which I found actually my students have said to me, which I realized maybe I know what they do on the weekends. One of them is, I was overweight. I'm still a bit. I used to be obese. Now I'm considered overweight by the BMI, right? Bowel movement index. No, the body mass index.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was told a few years ago, and I found it insulting. It's a student of mine. She goes, I like Bailey because he reminds me of my favorite cartoon character, Winnie the Pooh. That's not a compliment. An emasculated fat bear, that's not... at least if it was a guy, well, he's a bear, and I like bears.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's kind of a compliment.
That might not be a compliment you get from a woman, though.
No. And that's one of the things they teach them, and that's a standard comment, is Winnie the Pooh.
Wow.
Another one is they'll say, while you have such a varied work life, which means you can't hold down a job. And you have so much more experience in different countries, which means you can't be trusted to stay in one place. You must be a playboy. And it's almost, you should have an app where you could actually translate the comment.
Yeah.
It says, oh, I like your facial hair, because I like it when guys don't have a full beard.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, now you're insulting my beard. I don't know how to grow a beard. Okay.
This is like the passive-aggressive manual or something here.
It's like, I like you better without that yellow shirt that you had on last time. That was just, what were you thinking? And so, another thing that I've told you before, Mike, is I teach 20-year-olds. I teach 21-year-olds, 18-year-olds. And these Japanese guys go to meet 18-year-old girls.
Yes.
They're not that interesting.
No.
Not even in Japanese. If you speak Japanese, they're not interested.
Yeah.
You say, like, did you know that Paul McCartney was in a band before Wings?
Who?
What's Wings?
What's Paul McCartney?
Who's Paul McCartney? I know Stella McCartney.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and I would like one more of her purses, please, if you could help me out with that.
Yeah, and they're just not that interesting. I've had this argument with my bar hostess friends, and they say, you should come by. You might enjoy it. And I said, I'm more interesting than any of you. Okay, I speak 10 languages. I've been to like 40 countries, right? I've had many different jobs. I did talk radio in Japanese when it wasn't my first language. I have so many more stories. I've got the goofy story. I'm a comic. I entertain people for a living.
Mm-hmm.
You just sit for a living. You don't have to be entertaining because you've got cleavage.
Yeah.
And that's your asset and your asset. And so I've told them before, they're not that interesting to me. I'm more interested. You should be paying me.
Exactly.
My stories
Exactly.
my stories are a lot more interesting than your stories. Like, I have a funny story. One of the 20-year-old students, she said, I went into a Family Mart. We'll get to them later. I went into a Family Mart. I thought I was buying the cream with the Ichigo, with the strawberries in the bread. But when I got out, it was just the cream. And they said, okay, so what happened?
Wow.
Didn't it say it on the package? You read Japanese, right? Yeah, but I was disappointed. Okay, so what's the interesting part of that story? You're an idiot? Okay, well, I've got a story about when my wife thought Goofy was real. I think that's a funnier story.
I should be coaching them, getting them into comedy.
You don't have a story about like a mob hitman shouting you down? Not funny?
Your life?
You don't have a story about your comedy partner when NBC execs and Saturday Night Live execs are in the back of the room and your partner's on mushrooms?
Yeah.
And your name is up there with your partner? You don't have any stories
you
like
have
that?
any stories about growing up in New York in the 80s? What?
You know why? Because when I was 20, I probably didn't have that many stories. I'm pretty sure when I was 20, I still had more interesting stories than you did. So, anyway, that's the disclaimer. All right. So, Mike, do you have any experience with people when we all kind of test jokes out on people before we do a live, You might just even do it for your memory, and you just tell a friend, and maybe they don't laugh. You don't care. Because you know why you think it's funny.
Right.
And you think it's going to work. And a comic's instinct is pretty good. I've had some, but have you ever had an instance where, you'll tell someone a joke, and it's actually worked? Like your Tanaka-san bit or something, and you tell a joke, and someone will say, I think it'd be funnier if you did it that way. I mean, it's different if a comic says, I think you should put that part at the end.
Yeah.
But non-comics, civilians don't have that. They don't know punchline. They don't know build-up. And they'll say, I think it would be funnier if Tanaka-san was black.
Yeah.
Well, that wouldn't make any sense at all. It wouldn't make it funnier. It would make it less PC.
This is why I've given up on telling jokes like outside of the comedy shows. Like I've of course joke around, but I never test material on just regular people.
It's been Talk Funny, Mark Bailey and Mike Miller. We'll see you next week.